Hi and welcome to Kegels and Coffee. My name is Isabel and I'm your host. Sarah Dow was born and raised in Berlin, Germany. Her father's from Vietnam and her mother's German. Today, she and her partner Manu, who's from Argentina, live half of the year in Berlin and spend the other 6 months in Cornudella de Montsant, Spain, where I met her. Sarah started climbing at age 14, loves going to Elbsandstein when she's in Berlin, and is obviously surrounded by some of the best sport climbing areas when she's in Spain. We have been friends for almost 8 years, and Sarah honestly has made my experience of living in Cornudella super special. There's just something to be said about having another person live in the village who understands my background, speaks my mother tongue, and also just shares that dry German humor, as you will see. Sarah and I have spent many years contemplating the baby topic, as we, until this day, both share the same sentiment. We just don't have the desire to have children. Starting in her early 30s, this feeling tormented Sarah. In her own words, she felt like she was on a ridge, one steep slope symbolizing the fear of pregnancy and sacrificing her life for children, and the other side of the ridge representing the decision not to have children, but regretting it later in life. She took the decision seriously and started reading books, doing research, and talking to those around her who were deciding to have a family. Today, Sarah is 41 and feels at peace with the decision not to have children. In our conversation, she tells the story of her long and involved journey of coming to terms with her initial intuition. I appreciate Sarah's raw and sometimes outrageous approach to her decision-making process and the pro and con list that she came up with. And I also know that her comments on the downsides of having children can seem kind of harsh, but I just value her dry honesty a lot. Obviously, the intention of this episode is not to offend those who've decided to have children, but rather support the women who perhaps do not have the desire or simply feel lost, insecure, or alone in their own decision-making process. I would like to remind them that they're not alone and encourage them to listen deep inside while making one of the most important decisions in their lives.
No, seriously, what am I doing with my life?
How did that come across? Did they hear me?
I feel like I'm losing my fucking mind.
You're messed up.
I need to just Netflix and chill.
Like, I'm gonna meditate like a badass.
It's just like this psychotic break, and then I get my period, and I'm like, oh, it was just your period again.
Am I the only one feeling this crazy? Sarahlein.
Schnuffinase.
Schnuffinase, du bist meine kleine Schnuffinase. What if we did this podcast in German and just had people translate it?
That would be way better.
But
for me. No, that's what I thought when I was reading my notes, which I wrote for the film.
Yeah.
I thought, wow, I wrote that really good, and also, but because of the language, not only the content, let's say, but how I wrote it. I had to love myself. I wrote it years ago, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I thought, how good expressed is this?
Yeah.
And then I thought, too bad the podcast is in English because I'm just not able to. I'm able to get the information there, I guess.
Yeah.
But, it's different in your mother language.
I know, and the humor and the little, the intricacies and everything like this. But I think it's important. I mean, I'm enjoying, since I've been here in Spain, talking to people whose first language is not English. Because I feel like there's also just that cultural difference, different perspective. And sometimes even having to think about what a word means, it makes it just interesting.
Yeah,
in some ways,
I guess.
So.
And also, actually, I know it's the thing is you aren't doing the podcast in German. So that's what it is. We do it in English or we don't do it. So we can do it in English.
And I really didn't have a choice. We had to do this podcast because the topic that we're talking about today has been such a topic in my life and such a topic in your life, and we've been talking about it for years and literally dissecting this topic because it is an important topic for so many women. I mean, I think almost probably every woman in some shape or form. So I'm just really excited to do this recording because I feel like maybe other women will appreciate what we come up with and just our experiences and realizing that they're not the only ones that are thinking about these things or worrying about, whether or not they want to have babies and find themselves in a situation where sometimes it feels easy to just like freak out and feel alone in it. Like everybody else is like knows whether or not they want to have babies or just has babies and they have this perfect life. And you're like, what is wrong with me?
Everyone seems to know but me,
Yeah.
Like most of the people, they know, of course, children are part of a fulfilled life, And then you think, yeah, well, but I don't have this calling. What's wrong with me? Exactly.
Yeah. And I think our generation really is the first generation that has taken the power to, make a conscious decision. Because if I look at my parents' generation, I feel like most of that generation, not every single woman, but I think the majority of women from my mom's generation just kind of went with, I'm going to have a family, and family means I'm going to have children. And I see now in our generation that it's really become a big thing. It's like the freedom is also creating anxiety because now you have a choice. So what do you do?
Yeah.
So I want to start with giving the listeners just a little bit of a background on, we were just actually before we started recording thinking about how long have we been talking about this issue, or not issue, but like this topic. And then you were saying actually it started way earlier and way before I even met you. Because I know that we really dove into the details of the pros and the cons and should we or should we not have babies in 2018. But you said the issue started in, when you were like more or less 32. So why don't we just go back and just give a little background, like when it came up for you and, kind of the little bit of a background there.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think it started about maybe when I was 32. I think, when I was younger, I was never part of like those guys who thought for sure I will have a family later. For sure it will be part of my life. I kind of didn't think so much about it. And I wasn't also so fond of kids and family. And I thought maybe more that like all the families lots of families I see, they kind of like seemed to me more like trapped. It didn't seem like something I would want for me, like in general, I'd say, but on the other hand, I didn't knew lots of other people who didn't have a family. It just didn't seem so appealing to me. And but I thought anyway, it's not my topic now. When I was younger, I thought in one moment between 30 and 40, I guess, then this biological clock will probably kick in, and then I will be all desperate about children, I guess. But probably with other people. And then I thought, and then I will have some boyfriend, I guess, and then we can sort it out if so or not or whatever. And so, I made my life and stuff. And anyway, I thought like all the interesting parts of life will end about when I'm 30. I thought like everything which is nice, like traveling and climbing and adventures and guys and stories, like love stories. I thought all this will probably happen until you're 30, and then you'll probably have marry and then have a little house in, a row house.
Oh yeah,
in a suburb.
In a suburb. And then you have the children.
Exactly, and then you have the children and a job. I thought, and the boring life starts at 30. So the fun life will stop at 30. That's what I always thought.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and then I turned 30 and I found out, wow, life's still really good. I wouldn't have thought that. That's also when I started living half in Spain and half in Germany. And I had a relationship with Manu, with my current boyfriend, since I was 30. And and then I think when I was 32 or something, lots of friends started to have children or start to be unhappy because they didn't have the guy to form a family and stuff. And and that's when I asked myself, oh, fuck, I'm apparently already in this age where this is a topic. So I kind of like had a really deep look inside if I felt the desire to have children, and I felt no desire, just some, like then I started to imagine how my life would be if we would have children. I felt a lot of horror, let's say. And that's where the problem began.
Oh my God. I really appreciate like your blunt honesty about this. And I will say, when we started talking about it a few years later and you were still kind of in the topic, but maybe already had like sort of, come out of it a little bit as far as like the panic goes, like, should I do it? Should I not? You'd come more to terms with it. But what I loved about your approach so much was that you treated it like a research project. Like literally, I was like trying to go inside of myself and like listen to my intuition and meditate and have conversations with other women. But like generally speaking, I was more like trying to make peace with the fact that I didn't have the desire to have children, whereas you really went at it with like this curiosity of, what have other people done? What are the pros and cons? You read books, you listened to podcasts, you did all this research. And I remember a few years ago, you even sent me on WhatsApp a list of the pros and the cons of having children, which I have in front of me today here for the podcast and my Google Doc. All the pros and all the cons, which I really actually appreciate. And I think that kind of information comes from, women having gone through this, having gone through this, women having had children that might regret it or not regret it. Because I don't think a mother ever regrets having a children because they love them so much. But women honestly talking about how hard the experience was, which maybe didn't happen earlier in other generations, where there's an open dialogue about, man, this is really hard, and think about it before you just go into it, So I want to talk about that aspect. Like where did you start your research?
Yeah, well, I think, the big problem for me was that I asked myself, so do I feel the desire to have them? And then I kind of like imagined my life with all the situation with children and and I didn't like the idea because I have half my life in Spain, half my life in Germany. I have a boyfriend who's not, who at that time didn't want to have children, but kind of like showed me that he is open to, if I in the end want to have children, like to talk about it. So I kind of didn't feel that this would be like the
problem.
Yeah, the big problem. Maybe it would be, but I thought first I should figure it out myself. Yeah, and then I think I would have wished a lot to have also some role models which show me that life without children could also be good. And with role model, I didn't mean like friends in my age who were 30-something and maybe later on they will have children,
Right,
because that with 30, I'm super happy without children. That was for sure, I can climb, I can travel, I can be super lazy, sleep in and long and party. And but my fear was more that I would regret it maybe later, and that then you're like old and alone, and all your friends have their children over and the grandchildren, and they have this Sunday dinner parties, and on Christmas, like all the families around, and you're like all alone with a few other loners, and everyone who gets like Christmas card from their nephews, like bragging with it or super happy.
And you feel like you're just the only one that's like sitting at the table.
Yeah, exactly. That was
that
was a big fear of me, like that all of my friends sooner or later will decide for children, that I'm kind of like left out alone, or not obviously alone, but me and very few people will decide not to have children, and that everyone will be on another page, let's say. So my worries were more like in the future. And as I didn't knew a woman with 60 or 70 or something who didn't have children, and I knew she has a fulfilled life and is happy with whatever, I mean, I didn't knew women without children.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah.
But you were, because you and I have talked about this, how here in Cornudella, we have a pretty large community of women who don't have children. Mm-hmm. So when you were going through that, were you already here? Like, did you already have that community?
I was already here, but I wouldn't say that it was so much my community. Yeah. And now it's maybe 8 years later, more or less. And lots of people who was 32 or 35 don't have children could easily have children some years later. So I didn't perceive so much the women in my age as as good role example for not having children, because I was also happy with 32 not having children. What I wanted more like older woman, like because I thought it's kind of like sure that you have a better time the next year without children. I felt that is sure, but I was asking myself what with 50, 60, 70, something like this,
and that's
80.
Exactly what we were just saying, how now we are sort of trailblazers in some way, not the first ones, but we are forming this new generation, and generations after us are going to be able to look at us when we're like 40, 50, 60 or listen to this podcast, and that's kind of cool in that sense that we get to do that for them.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, for sure.
I do remember also that you were saying, because I have the double life, you have the double life. I spend most winters. You spend every winter here in Cornudella. You go to Berlin, Germany in the summers, and I go to Colorado. And I remember that I think was saying that I had more friends in Colorado that didn't have children.
I remember.
Then I remember you were really in it. Like every freaking person was having babies in Berlin.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's depressing. When you don't want babies, because you know they're gonna kind of fall off the face of the earth for a while.
Yeah, it is.
And it's just the fact. We don't have to lie about it or sugarcoat it. It is just the freaking fact that when a woman has a baby, that is going to be the most important thing for a while.
Yeah, for sure. And now we know it's for a while, but back then I didn't know that they will come back at one point. Now that's what I experienced, that you kind of like, they are lost for you for a while, more or less. Of course, you can have your visits and say the baby is nice and stuff and help out a bit. But they kind of like disappear, they become the worst climbing partners ever, more or less. You kind of like really think maybe you'll lose them. Or that was my fear, that I will lose my friends to their families. But now, as it's a process which is already going further, they come back when the children are more or less 2 years, and they come back with a lot of hunger to have party, to have trips, to have adventures, to have whatever. And obviously they don't have so much free time, but they try to make things possible. Some with more
like more energy or more willingness or something.
Or some with more success, let's say. Some really arrange it really good to find time with you or to do things again, and others nearly not at all. But I think the desires are nearly everyone to have bit back the rest of the life you had before.
Yeah. My very first episode for Kegels and Coffee was with my really close friend Heather, and she was about to have a baby, and I talked about that fear of losing her as a friend in my introduction. But I also know her and how fanatic she is, because she's a professional rock climber. Like, I knew climbing was still going to be important to her. I also knew that our friendship was important to her. And so I felt like at ease around not necessarily like losing her, like understanding it's going to be a bit different. But she's already like, she basically climbed until she gave birth. She started climbing really soon after her birth, and she's already texting me like, I can't wait for you to come back to Colorado and us to go rock climbing. So I think she's like the extreme exception of what you were just talking about, like really proactive,
for sure.
And she has like the resources to make sure that she has a babysitter, and she's training, and she's doing all these things. And I love that. I feel like she has a good balance going on. But it takes a lot of support system to make that happen. Because then I have a friend in Germany who is a single mom and has a job, and she's just like struggling, like when her mom can maybe sometimes take care of her baby, then she gets to have a little bit of free time. But, she doesn't have that sort of situation. So I think sometimes it has to do with the support or the financial means.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I know. It's not about only the will, let's say.
Yeah, totally. I kind of want to dive into what you found out in your research. I love how I talk about it as a research project. It's so perfect. And you're so German, like in that sense. Like, obviously, you live half your time in Spain, but you just have this like side about you that I like really appreciate. And, but yeah, I want to talk about a little bit of that process of,
Well, I think the one part of the research was just the natural research. That some of my friends already had babies and kind of like be there with really open eyes and ears and and listen to their stories, perceive and see. And what I saw there, normally wasn't so appealing for me, I had to say. Now, for me, it's like so obvious. Like if I would tell a 40-year-old person with children or without, they probably know what's the worst thing about or the bad thing about having children. But for me, obviously, I had to find out. And lots of my friends told me after, hey, Sarah, you had a way better idea how it is to have children than I had when I decided to have children. And like I had some friends who told me when I told them the list, I have 30 points against children. And then one of my colleagues from work, she told me, oh, tell me. And then we had a dinner and we talked about 3 hours. And she told me, I cannot believe that you know all this without having your own children. Like, because it was so important for me. I listened with my whole ear, with my whole eyes. I wanted to see everything. And what I didn't like about the idea, I think, first of all, the lack of sleep. I love sleeping.
Yeah.
I love sleeping. I love sleeping long and not getting up so much times at night. Though the problem is now that, my boyfriend, he wakes up so much in the night and he's all cuddly and nice and romantic. And so sometimes I think it's for me, I get so little sleep like a mom with a young baby, but I decided not to have a baby for having good sleep, but I don't have good sleep now.
You can't win. You just can't win. I mean, I'm telling you, separate beds. Separate beds.
You're right.
Yeah, and the more friends I talk about that with, and honestly and openly with, the more I hear other people say, you're absolutely right. For sleeping, separate beds or separate rooms is literally the best. But that was a little side note. So you should work on that because you can if you want.
Thanks for reminding me.
Yes, it's a good reminder. It makes such a big difference. Sleep is so important. And I agree with you. Sleep is so important. And that is something that has a lot of consequences because sleep impacts your mood. It impacts your energy level. It impacts your, relationship to your partner. So many things.
Yeah, for sure.
And then you have the baby that you have to take care of and you're sleep deprived. It's hard.
It's hard. Yeah, and that what is... And then, I think the problems with a partner, like that I see lots of parents like the freedom of one person to go jogging or do some yoga or meet up with friends is always including the other one being in charge of the children. So there is a little bit freedom for the couple and they kind of like have to share it. And there comes a lot of argues or discontentment when one thinks, I think normally the man, but maybe it's also... a prejudice. I think for women it's like more normal to be in charge at the beginning and then, because of the giving breast thing and then bit by bit kind of like the man can take over more responsibilities and then they do it or not. But I think it's like there's this bit of freedom, like this very little cake for both of them and they kind of like have to share it and one of them eats a big piece. That means the other one has a small piece or has no piece at all.
It becomes like this competition.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but you went jogging yesterday. It's my time to do yoga or something like this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And for some guys, it is super normal to give these freedoms to their wives or girlfriends or whatever. And to some, it's not so much. There's still some macho thing in there, I think, depending on the couple, obviously. And also there are couples, which I know, for example, where the guy needs less space for his own, but is still very open to give it to his girlfriend. Yes, that exists. But I think you get a lot of more couple issues with this having children and also like about how to raise them. Some people fight so much even about choosing the clothes for the children, that they have a different taste or the buggy. I have a friend who were really getting big arguments. Which buggy? She bought a buggy and he said, it looks like a sarg, a grave? No.
What is it called? The word with the dead people or the box with the dead people.
Tumba?
No, not tumba. It's like not the mortgage. That is the funny. Morgue. Is it a morgue? No, that's not it.
I don't know.
Anyways, it's like the zag, like where
that
they put
people
it.
go to get in the earth.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my God, my English is so bad. So funny. Anyway, so the buggy looked like one of those things.
She bought one. She thought it's really hip and stuff because she's a really hip one, And he thought, no, I will never put my child into that looks like this. what?
Yeah, we don't know.
Yeah, this thing for the dead people. And in the end, she had to give it back and fighting about the cloth. But that's obviously, I think that's a bit ridiculous. I think lots of couples don't fight about these things. But yeah, about how to raise them. Yeah, not if they hit them or not, but I guess.
No, that is a big deal. I mean, I feel like even like raising Ini, my little dog, with Pata, I get so pissed, like, you know, and that's just a dog. Yeah, because like he's more chill with her and I'm trying to train her and like, you know, and things like this. And he's just like, but she's just a little dog. I'm like, no, but she needs to still have whatever manners and behaviors and things that she, I don't know, just like, or what she eats or that she doesn't get just food from the table. And it's easy. It's easy. And I think until you have a baby, you don't even realize how you're just, you know, protective of your ways. And then you have a baby and you're like, oh shit, this really matters to me. Even the buggy.
Yeah, I think you don't realize before, you know. No. Yeah, and I think there comes so much topics for a couple also, which...
The language that you would speak, like would I speak German, English, or Spanish, and when? Yeah. You know, so that the child is raised bi or trilingual, you know, like I know my parents had to like really talk about that a lot because my mom's like, I want them to speak English, you know, and I don't know, it's just like they come up as you have them, I think.
Yeah, I
these
think
issues,
so.
You know.
And then there's also like the sex issue, you know, a lot of people, I didn't know that so much back then, but lots of people who have children after that, they're not so up to having sex anymore, you know?
Yeah. I think that there's probably different reasons. I mean, first, like, physically, your body has to recover.
Yeah, exactly.
You have to be rested. We all know, even without having babies, if you don't feel well and if you're just, like, tired, that the last thing you want to do is have sex. Like, you just want to sleep.
Yeah, exactly.
Rest. And then it's like, probably your hormones, you know, there are probably different reasons for that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, like, at least with a woman, she has all the time body contact with the children way more than she would like to. And everyone's like grabbing tits and stuff. And, and it's generally always already too much body contact and need and always always
somebody like sucking on you, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly. And then maybe after a whole day of this, you're tired. And then the guy has some physical needs or, you know, or bodily needs. And I think a lot of women simply are tired and don't want more, and I could understand. And also to find time, I think, because like I don't have a full-time job, Manu not also, and still it's kind of like well, this is the thing. For us, it just has to happen in daytime normally, because then we have energy. In the evening, we're tired. Yeah. And if in daytime it should happen, then no one has to be at work and we're not climbing. And that doesn't happen so often. And then I think in this moment when it happens, then there's children and needs all the attention. Then when should it happen?
Yeah, the chances are just lower. Yeah. The chances are lower because already as is without children, it's not like you're just, you know, always up for it and always have the energy and always feel like it, and then you add the children and it's like you have to really, really, really make effort.
Yeah, exactly.
You really have to make effort, because I feel like even being in a long-term relationship, you already have to make effort without the children.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I feel.
You have to make a date night. You have to, like, you know, be on the same page, and already sex becomes a thing after a while, for sure. Yeah,
for sure. Well, I think the list is long. What annoying things comes with children? Obviously, there are good things also. I'm aware of it, and I've always been. But yeah, for example, you were talking about the research, and now I come back to it. I read a lot of books. I think at least 8 or maybe 12.
And you said you don't remember any of the titles.
Let me think. I could look them up in my Kindle.
Yeah, we can always put it in the show notes.
Okay. Yeah, and because they're really funny titles. I think if one would have seen my Kindle by Bibliothek? Library, they would have laughed so much. Because I've read a lot of books, because mostly what I was searching for is women who also didn't feel like having children and still having sort of a satisfying life, you know. But now it seems a bit ridiculous to me, because now I'm 40. As you say, we have a super big community here in Spain. A lot of cool women and men who don't have children. We have so much fun together. We do so much nice stuff and party and climbing and lots of stuff more. Playing table soccer and dance and everything. It's like, I think we have a really cool life together, and we have a good community, and we have a lot of nice friends. And now it kind of like seems a bit weird, all the worries I had back then. And back then, if I would have known that at one point I will find so much peace with my decision not to have children, I would have been so erleichtert.
Relieved.
Relieved. I would have been so relieved. I couldn't imagine it. For me, lots of time it was really like a dark cloud always on top of me. Like more or less, I would say 2 years that I felt like that I was on a peak of a mountain, or let's say a Grat, you know? Like...
What do you mean by that? Grat, the peak of the mountain?
Yeah, like a Grat is also a thing in the mountain, you know, to both sides. You can
fall down. Like the ridge.
Yes, I think it's a ridge, I guess. Yeah, I felt like on a ridge, and the one thing was like a dark future with children, you know, like all the body changes, the pregnancy. I didn't look forward to have a big belly and everything. I really don't like it.
Oh, the birth. The birth is like the scariest thing for me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then now I notice how much damage it does to a lot of parts of the woman's body. Really, I wasn't aware back then how much damage it would make. But a lot of things they have to go pee a lot, or maybe they can't go jogging without. How you say? Yeah, because what is this?
Pelvis.
Because the pelvis floor can get really fucked, and not only on women who don't do sports, but a lot of women who do a lot of sports and are in good shape before they kind of like ruin it a bit with the birth and the pregnancy, and they suffer really long-term disadvantages also, and really I wasn't aware of it back then as I am now, but I think really women sacrifice a lot. Yeah. And for sure, they get a lot of rewards, I'm sure. But what I want to say, that was the one side of the ridge. No, like all the disadvantages would come for me, and the not freedom with having children and like all these topics. And on the other thing, I thought, if I have children now that was with the children, but I thought the other side of the ridge, the other hole in which I would fall, if not that side, the other side would be, then maybe I don't have children and enjoy my life now, but regret it later, you know, when I cannot have children anymore. And then I would feel maybe that I missed the best part in life because I was just playing around and didn't know back then what the real values are. Because like what everyone with children, not everyone, but lots of people say things which make the other people who don't have children really insecure. Like without children, it's just half of the life. My uncle said, for example, or another friend of me said, like, until you don't have your own children, you didn't grow up yet, or you're not matured yet. And a lot of people tell you, wow, it's the best thing what happened to my life, my children. I couldn't imagine life without it. And that made me really, really insecure, because I know it's a big topic and I don't want to fuck up on it, you know? I mean, if you did go in your life to Australia or not, I mean, whatever, I guess, you know? But having children or not, at one point, it's not reversible, you know? You kind of make a decision. I knew I didn't have to make it right now. And a lot of people say, but you still have time. You can have children with 40. And I said, yes, but then with 40, I will ask myself this question. For me, it's not a thing about delaying the decision, and because I want to make a good decision and not just have the flow. My boyfriend doesn't want children, so I guess I won't. I didn't have the calling. I really want to make a profound research actually, and then make a decision which I won't regret. And I guess I'm making it, and maybe I'm going to regret it, I don't know, but for now I feel super good with it. And even if in one moment I regret it, I will for sure know that I did my best to find the decision for me, you know, like I've done everything to find the right decision for me.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I feel like you are making a very informed, conscious decision. And what I would say about regret, not just with babies in general, I have a feeling like I have a sense around regret, because I think about that a lot with life decisions. The fact that I moved to America, the fact that I moved to South America, the fact that I now spend half of my life in Spain. Like, those are all big decisions where I'm like, am I going to regret this? Because this decision, as we talked about the other day, is taking away the opportunity to do this other thing, you know, and will I regret that, right? Yeah. And so I feel like I'm coming to terms with this feeling of whether it's about babies or work or life partners or life choices or where I live, is if I, as you said, am going inward and perhaps even doing the research or even just talking to my friends and my mentors, the people that I trust that are in my arena, and then come to a conclusion that really truly resonates with my heart, with my soul, with my intuition, I can't really regret it later because at the time I did the best that I could with what I had and what I knew.
Yeah.
And in that case, if I wake up at age 50 and I go, shit, I really want to have children. I should have had children. I know that what I would do is I would either become a foster mom or I would adopt if I really cannot not have a child in my house, and I would be okay with it. Because I also knew that when I was in my prime time to make babies, I did not have the biological clock. I have never had it, and I'm 41, and I probably won't have it.
Yeah.
I have friends that love being pregnant, and I admire them, and I want them to have babies because that's what they want. They love the feeling of it. They love having their own babies. They love looking at their babies and seeing their own eyes in the baby. I've never been that way. I've never played with dolls. Like, I've just never had that thing. So I feel like the regret thing, it's kind of, I don't think it's really like a regret thing. It's more just like, okay, if you're missing something in your life later on, what are the other ways of like satisfying that yearning, in some sense? Like, I feel like the regret for me wouldn't necessarily be that strong because I feel like I did make a decision that at the time felt true.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, for me also.
Because I think what I would regret more is making a decision that did not feel right. A decision that was pushed on me because my dad tells me you have to have children. You will regret it. And a family is not a family without children. And all the things that people have told you, they've told me. If those are the reasons for me to make a decision to have a child, I think there's a much higher chance for me in 10 years from now to have a regret on a decision that did not come from my heart.
Yeah, I think so too. But also, I think it's kind of like normal to take into account the things that people tell you. I took them serious because, the people who tell you this, they know both sides. They know how it is not to have children because in one point they had children before they didn't. And then they knew they can compare. And we only know from our own lives what it is, how to have not children. And so it's kind of like important to listen to the other side also to make your decision.
Yeah.
But for example, this is what my uncle said, like, it's without children it's just half of the life, and now I understand it. Back then not, but half of his life was having children. But for me, one half life, let's say it's climbing, the other half is working. It's not like this, there's always also climbing and friends and having a lot of fun, but of his life, half of this life was children. And so he assumed that everyone who didn't have children will have the other half empty. But we empty the other half with other things. No, we fill it, the other half with other things. And so our halves look different.
Yeah. And I also, think that if you and I were to decide suddenly to have a baby, like, if you decide to have a baby, you're going to love the baby and you're going to adapt to it because we are very adaptable human beings. And I think Mother Nature works in such ways where you're going to love the baby. You're going to, you're going to change your life accordingly. And then that is your life and that's your reality. And that's just it. It's not like suddenly you're like, oh my God, like, I feel like if you were to make the decision, like my mom did, because she actually didn't necessarily want to have children.
Yeah.
And she was, she was a traveler and she was like very independent and wanted a career. And my dad, she's American, my dad is German. My dad was like, no, if we're going to get married, I really want to have children. And like I said, in that generation, I was like, okay, what do I do? And she decided, okay, sure, you want children. And she obviously loves my brother and I so, so much. And like, we have a great family, dynamic, and I'm, and I'm grateful. Obviously for my life. And I don't think that she runs around thinking about all day long, like, oh, I shouldn't have had children. I shouldn't have had children. She's like, okay.
Does she exist? I wish you weren't there.
I know, exactly. You're like, okay, that's my reality. And then that's your reality. And I think your uncle that was his reality. And so he's like, this is my reality and you should have it too because it's actually kind of cool. And it is, because once you're in it and it's going to be probably really great most of the time.
Well, I wouldn't say it. Actually, most of the time, like part of the time.
Part of the time, half of the time. I don't know. I mean, it really is like case to case, you know? I mean, I do have a lot of friends in America that inspire me with like how they have done motherhood. Like, you know, Heather, who I was mentioning. My friend
come on,
Sandy,
she's all at the beginning.
She's
of
at the beginning, but my friend
she has
Sandy,
3 months now, maybe if I count right. 3 months. You cannot say that she has done it all nice. I mean, you can maybe evaluate that when she has some years old child. Or whatever.
Yeah, well, my friend Sandy. Then I think she's another example because her son Baze and they're an exceptional family because Matt and Sandy are just like super young, dynamic, interested, and Baze is like this crazy climber. You know, they take him on these trips and they do all these things with him, and I feel like they're one of those families where I'm like, if I were to have a child, I mean, that's a really cool way of raising your child. And I there's this thing in Boulder, Colorado, you know, we call them the super moms that like climb 514, have an amazing child, have like
a good job,
you know,
and a
good job and a career. And then you like look at yourself and you're just like, oh, like I don't have children, but I'm still kind of a loser. I do not climb 514. Like, what am I doing wrong? Maybe I should have children so at least I can be like, at least I have children.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Actually, yeah. Didn't we talk that? No, I think it was like someone said, I think it was someone without children, I don't remember. She said, yeah, lots of people who have children is because they don't have to do anything else in their life.
Because I think for us who do not have children, there is a little bit of a pressure. Like, what else are you doing? What else are you doing with your life? Yeah. Like, are you traveling and climbing? Are you taking advantage of the freedom that you have now bought yourself by not having children?
Exactly. So you can justify even better not to have children if you are using your time for something else, but if you're just hanging around, being lazy, and not having children.
Oh my God. Oh yeah. I mean, yeah. And you know, I actually have had friends honestly tell me that you just get to be pregnant and
you have your goal, or at least your intermediate goal. No, you have to get the child and get it through the first year, and it's kind of like it's a goal. No, like you don't have, you know, where to put your effort in.
Right. Yeah. It's like the most important thing is like the health of this child. One of the things that you had on your con list was also money. Yes. I think that's actually more of a thing in the US because I think it's much more expensive to have a child in the US because of healthcare. Healthcare there is not anywhere close to what it is in Europe as far as like what you get. And then education. Education is very, very expensive in the United States.
Yeah, you're right.
So you talking to me about like children being expensive, girl, you should come to the United States and see how much money you have to make if you want that child to have perfect healthcare, if you want that child to have like the best education.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, because in Germany, actually, the healthcare is included in your healthcare. You don't have to even to pay more. It's normal that your children are insured there. And with education, I mean, university is more or less free, And if you don't have enough money, then the state helps you. I mean, obviously, private universities and stuff would also cost, but it's not so common as there. So I think you're sure. And still, then I thought maybe when the children are smaller, then you don't need so much money. But once they are teenagers, you need to buy, snowboards and basketball shoes and a lot of presents and cool clothes.
And like piano lessons and tennis lessons.
Exactly.
And,
or even horse riding lessons or a horse they want then.
Oh, this is another thing that you said. You become a taxi driver.
Yeah, for sure. You have to, because I think it's normal now that children go at least to 3 different things a week, maybe piano lessons and then tennis lessons and then maybe some, I think there's always a thing with music and sports. And then something else, like more creativity, like theater lessons or something,
right, or language.
Exactly. So each children has to go 3 times a week there. Someone has to bring them. And as you normally have at least 2 children, then it makes 6 times a week. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot of driving.
And then the birthdays.
Oh my gosh, the birthday. That was a whole nother thing that you talked about. Yeah, that's a whole nother thing. My mom, by the way, she did drive me to tennis, and I could walk to piano, but she drove me to tennis and ballet. Yeah, and she, later down the road, when I realized how much she did for us, I was like, thank you so much. I think at the time you have no freaking clue. You're just like, take me to the piano lessons, take me to the,
of course.
and the poor
you
mom
don't
is
even
just
want to
like,
go,
no.
probably.
Yeah, you don't even want to go because you're like, oh, I don't want, I just want to go and hang out with my friends and it's like this whole thing. But not to forget the birthday thing.
No, my colleague told me, and I just couldn't believe it. She told me, you know what? Nowadays, you make a birthday party and you have to give not only your children presents. And if your child goes to another birthday party, of course they have to come with a present. But as the organizer of the birthday party of the child, you have to have a little present for each child who is invited. Imagine. And I think, what? And I know nearly all the parents I know hate the birthday parties of their children. They suffer so much. They, oh my God, this is the worst. I'm so happy it won't happen in the next year again. It's like so exhausting to have all these children come over to organize the food and the Schnitzeljagd and whatever,
Oh my God, this is what my dad used to do.
Yeah.
Because I grew up in a little village, and so Schnitzeljagd was perfect. And I don't know the English word for it, but basically, it's like when you run through the woods and you follow these little marks and signs, and then you then you find a treasure, and that
and
whatever.
then you have like signs where you have to look next, and
what is that called in English? I have no idea. Anyways, my dad was like the best. He was so sweet, and all my friends loved it because like we did a Schnitzeljagd and my birthday, and yes, everybody got a present, and the present was a flashlight because the Schnitzeljagd went into the dark. Like we actually it was at the end of the day, and then it started getting dark and everybody had a flashlight. So it got even more exciting. And then that was like their present, which, from my perspective, great. From their perspective, it's a lot of planning. But I think my dad actually had a lot of fun with it because he's not the one who's stuck with us every day. Yeah. You know what I mean? So, but the birthday party.
Imagine apart from all this, you have to buy little presents for all the other children who come. Come on. And I told her I wouldn't do it. And she said, I know what you think. I also thought it. But then you really want to have the child where every other child says, this birthday sucked because they didn't get a present? No. And then you say, yeah, fuck. So you also buy the presents. Yeah. Everyone hates it and everyone does it.
Yeah, because it's just expected. Oh my God.
And you know what happened to me while I was like kind of like so unsecure if I wanted or not. I felt like really threatened. I felt like really threatened from the fact that everyone else was having children and stuff. I even had a list with all the women I knew who didn't have children. And when they got pregnant, I kind of like kicked them off of the list. I don't have. You were on the list, obviously, also, and Lena also. No, the list doesn't exist anymore because they stole my iPhone, but. Yeah, and so I had this list, and like all the time I got another woman, like friend of a friend and stuff, and she was in a reasonable age. I won't put a 25-year-old woman on the list, obviously, no?
Right.
Must be a woman who says she doesn't have children and is more or less whatever, 30-something, 5 or whatever. Obviously they still can have children, but they already count a bit.
But going back to our community here in Cornudella, I feel like I have more friends here that have no children than that have children.
Me too. Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that, and perhaps it does have to do with the fact that, these are all pretty fanatic rock climbers.
Yeah, probably.
Most of them. Not all of them, but most of them. Or travelers and stuff, Yeah. Because I do feel like your environment influences you.
But for me, it felt like a big threat that my environment in Berlin, like now everyone has really children of my friends. Not everyone, but nearly everyone, I'd say. Or my group from friends like, Germany, and my sister has 3 children, as you know. But for example, for me, like in this high peak phase of doubt, let's say, for me, every friend more who got pregnant, that was a it was a bad news for me actually. Yeah. And for example, when my friend Ollie told me that he was going to have a child, also I think he got one was 49 or something. And me and him, we were like the last in our group of friends. And always when everyone was at the rocks and started to try to give you their children in the arms to kind of like put their harness on, we kind of like escaped together, like on climbing on the rocks, because there it's not sports climb, but you kind of like disappear from the ground, multi-pitch,
Yeah, the LB, yeah.
Yeah, in the LV, exactly. Like everyone appeared with their children and with the picnic things, and we were like, what the fuck, let's get out of here. And then when he told me that he was going to have children, because we were like the last two of this group.
The last one standing.
Yeah, the last one standing in this group, I cried.
No, I understand. That is really hard when you're feeling this one thing, but around you, the signs are all going in the different direction. You're what is fucking wrong with me? Why am I feeling this way? Why can't I just be normal? Why does everybody else have it figured out? Which actually leads me to another thing I was going to say, is that I feel like our conversation still is kind of taboo. Like, I think I'm going to piss people off with this podcast episode, which is perfect, because that's exactly what I want to do, is I want to create a dialogue. Like, I want to create a conversation around this, and like have people feel free to have more of a open, honest talk about it. But I do think it's still taboo, and I do think that generally speaking, oftentimes women who don't have children are viewed as selfish, which I still find flabbergasting, because like, why would it be selfish to do something that feels absolutely true to you? Like, you could easily, I feel like, argue that somebody that has a baby is selfish because this world is overpopulated and we actually don't have the resources to like maintain the population that we have. So you could go into the other direction and be like, having a baby is selfish because you want to have your own genes in the world and see a baby that has your eyes and your nose. Now you're taking, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I feel like, and I'm not saying, for me, nobody's selfish. For me, everybody should just be connected with themselves and make that decision. But I find it still interesting how this is such a taboo topic, and that there's something negative around, around the conversation that you and I are having, like where you're like, oh, I'm going to piss off people that have babies. But then on the contrary, like, people that do have children are like, that's the only way. They're not worried about, pissing or hurting us,
Yeah, I know.
Does that make sense what I'm trying to say? Like how it's
for
like still
sure.
kind of
because
a weird
I've
thing.
heard comments, that people tell me that I'm kind of like aprovechando del sistema. What is it?
Like taking advantage of the system.
That I take advantage of the system because I don't have children. So I and when I will be old and will receive the jubilation.
Yeah, like the retirement.
Yeah. Then because then they told me, our children will pay your retirement. But you won't, you're not raising children who will also pay my retirement, let's say, no? Yeah, so I've been told this quite sometimes, and I'm personally sure, there might exist persons who do have children for the retirement thing, to pay the retirement account or whatever. And there might be other people who don't have children because of overpopulation, but I think really most of the person, they make a personal decision if they want children in their life or not. It's a personal decision. And after that, some of them kind of like play a dirty game, to let the other ones feel guilty because they don't pay their retirement thing, or their children don't pay their retirement thing, or the other way around. And I think it's a dirty game because I took my decision not to have children, not because of overpopulation or environment, Umweltverschmutzung, what is this?
Pollution.
Yeah, or because of pollution.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's not the reason for my decision.
Exactly.
And I think it's not the reason for their decision also to have children. And that's why it's mean to point out someone you're selfish because of these kind of side effects.
Exactly. And that's like, I think what I was just trying to say also. This is make the decision that you want, whether or not you want to have babies. And I support that. And please support my decision without judgment, Because like, I feel like if you stand strong behind what you've done, then you can still listen to the other side and be like, yeah, of course. Because obviously we haven't like dived into the pros because we both have decided not to have children. Yeah. And I'm just going to mention a few because I do look around and see like the beauty of family life. And I grew up in a family, like I have parents. I understand and see the love. And I will never know what it feels like to hold my own child that came from me in my arms. And I've been told that is like the ultimate love that you will ever feel. I mean, I swear the fact that I feel that love for my dog. But people tell me that's not the truth, that there is more love for that child possible. And absolutely, I believe it because I will, as long as I don't have a child, we'll never know. I love, my friends' kids and babies, and I love to play with them. And I love when they're like, around that age when they're like 5 or 6, where they become like little, people. And I think that they're super intriguing and innocent. And one of my dancers, Chris, actually works with children, and he's amazing at it and with them. And it's so cool to witness. I see like the beauty of it. I absolutely do see the beauty of it. And I think you actually back then sent me the pro list, which is funny because apparently I didn't write down the pros in my Google Doc. Maybe I was not so worried about that list. But you did say, like, I think you said, like, holidays, right? Because, like, I think one of the pros was, like, Christmas and, like, having the family together. And they also, like, children believe in Santa Claus. Like, that's super fun. It brings you back to your own childhood. That curiosity and like...
And for me also, I have to admit, the good thing about children is more later when I'm older. I have to repeat, yes, it sounds selfish, but I didn't decide to have children to have someone to take care of me when I'm older. But I imagine when you're like close to your death or not even before, I think... when you're like in this grandma age, and then because everyone is crazy about getting grandchildren, it must be something about. I see my parents are really happy with their grandchildren, with the children of my sister. Well, they're exhausted also because they help a lot, but I see them really happy, and I'm so happy that they have them, their grandchildren. Yeah, I think it's nice. Yeah, well, I think for me now, it's quite perfect because I have 3 nephews and they are super cute. And I enjoy a lot to have them in my family life, let's say. And it was like that I like or love him so much. It wasn't from the beginning because obviously when my sister told me she was pregnant, I was excited from the first moment because my sister, I've known her by that her whole life because she's younger than me, And I always knew when she will have children, they will be part of my family. Also, it's a bit selfish maybe, Lots of friends who told me they have children. It was at least with one crying eye, and the other one was kind of happy for them, obviously, because it's what they wanted. But I have to admit that nearly all of them, I was kind of like suffering the loss of my friends and the friendship, and that everything will change and that I'll get less of them and that we're not the same peer group anymore and this stuff. But with my sister, it was like, wow, cool. And it was so exciting for me. And then, she had it in winter, her first son, and I flew back to Germany to be there in the birth. No, not in the hospital, but be around when he's born. Because she wanted that, and I wanted that also. Like be there and see the newborn, like in the first day and stuff. And so I flew there, and actually I was there with her when she got this cramps, or how you say?
Contractions.
These contractions, and then they went to hospital, and I waited with my mom on the sofa, knowing, wow, now it's going to happen, and it was so fucking exciting. Knowing my sister, I've known her all life long now, she's getting this child, she's becoming mother, and then the next time we visited her in the hospital, that was like super special. Obviously, but then I flew back to Spain and I didn't see my nephew for 3 months. And she sent me so much pictures, more or less 4 pictures a day and stuff. When we talked a lot, we had video calls and stuff. And when I was going to go to Germany back, like every summer in May, I already felt a lot of pressure that I had to fall in love with my nephew at first sight, because I felt this expectation of her side that I had to fall in love with a nephew for sure. But she always said, I can't wait until you guys meet. And I'm like, yeah, okay. And and all the friends are so much in love and give so much presents and stuff. And like, I kind of felt a pressure on me, like that I will fall in love directly and start to buy presents every day, And and so the day came when I was going to visit her, and it felt like a big sack of sand, like 20 kilos on my shoulder. I walked up the stairs because I felt so much the expectations of
anxiety.
her, and I was afraid that I couldn't meet them because I have never been fond of babies. It's kind of like always seemed to me boring and uninspiring and even not very sweet. For me, children, if they are sweet maybe at 2 or 3 years or something, but babies, like, and so So I went up the stairs like this. I'm afraid. And actually it happened. She opened the door and didn't even give me a hug. Started to jump and say, come, see him. And run without greeting me, let's say, giving me a hug. She ran to the place where the baby was in the bed. And I followed her. And she pointed on him and screamed, look at him. And I looked at him and thought, fuck. He's as boring and uninteresting like all the other babies. I don't find him so sweet. That's what I thought. I didn't say it. So to not say it, I didn't say nothing because normally I don't lie, Yeah. I said, oh, look at him. After that, I got told by a good friend, you always have to say when you see a baby for first time, it's sweet. It's your duty. And after that, do and think whatever you want. You have to say it first thing. And now I do it. Because, a friend told me, it's your duty. You say it. And it's not worth it. Because it was weird with my sister after. She noticed that I wasn't directly in love. And she kind of said, okay, let's go in the kitchen. Took the baby. We walked in the kitchen, And then she put it in a little chair. And then we start talking, but I felt her being uneasy and aggressive, felt her starting to be aggressive. Yeah. And then in one moment, and I knew I had to say the sweet things about the baby and stroke him and stuff. No, stroke, cuddle him, him and stuff, touch him. Yeah. And in one moment I thought, and it really got all the time more uneasy and weird. And in the end I said, can I maybe take him on the arms? And she said, yes, of course. And then I took him on the arms and they said, sweet, and then everything eases out, and then it was normal again. And so from then on, I just,
Yeah.
And I mean, now I love him. It's just not maybe love at first sight. It's it has to grow also, you know?
Yeah.
And there are people who are not such baby people.
I personally really love the idea of adoption. I think, I lived in Chile when I was in my 20s, and I worked at this orphanage for a while, and I fell in love with the children that I worked with. It was an orphanage only for young boys between the age of 8 and 13. And obviously some of them are really difficult. Some of these kids come from the streets, stealing food, that's how they survive. So they have a hard shell, and they're like, fuck you. You don't tell me what to do. But, even those people, sometimes I could break some shells, Yeah. And then I had obviously my quote unquote favorites, Ruben was one of them. He was super shy. He unfortunately came from abusive home. His uncle, who was alcoholic, was taking care of him. And then every time things would hit the fan, he would come back to the orphanage, and then his crazy mom would come and pick him up again. It's actually really sad because one day I came into the orphanage and she had picked him up, and I never got to see him before I went back to the United States, and he and I had gotten really close. But anyways, my point being is when I worked there, and I was 20, 21 or something, I was like, I could totally see myself adopting a child from South America. And this is way before I, even, had to make any decisions. So for me, the idea of being able to adopt gives me peace of mind because, I could do that later in my life. And even though I know, again, the process is not necessarily easy, but I just feel like it's something that I could envision myself doing if I really wanted to have a child. But back to you, I'm just curious, how did you in the end come to the conclusion that you came to, which, you've said you don't want to have children, but I'm curious, was it a decision that was based on all the research that you did and the books that you read and the people that you talked to, or I'm curious how you came to peace with your decision.
Yeah, I did a pro list and a contra list, and in the end, the contra arguments were 2 more than.
So that was what it was. In the end, it was a math problem.
Pro arguments were 3, and the contra arguments were 35. So no, but actually, I did pro contra list. But no, that wasn't the end. Why I took the decision for not having the children. I'd say after this whole epic journey, I just came back to my gut feeling. That's not my thing. That I know that I feel that I appreciate my life just as it is with all the freedoms I have. And for me, it would mean to give up a lot to have children. And yeah, and it felt back then, it still feels for me like it would be such a burden to have them, despite of obviously there are some nice things. And I think if, like, for example, 50% of the people I knew back then would have decided not to have children, I would never have doubted to which half I do belong, because, yeah. But that wasn't the case. Back then I had the impression that that I was quite alone in a family-focused world. Yeah, and I think back then I would have loved to have had some role models, some happy old women without children, but I didn't know any. So I was scared that this is not possible, to be old and happy and not have children. And yeah, I'd say I turned the topic around thousands of times, and in the end I ended up where I started. I didn't want this for me. And yeah, if back then I would have known that I would come so much peace with this topic eventually, for me it would have saved years of uncertainty. Yeah.
Thank you so much for like showing up as the person who you are, with the humor, with the crazy stories. I love that about you. I love your honesty. I love your raw stories about how this journey has been for you. So I really appreciate it. And, it might piss people off, but also I truly believe that there are women out there in different ages that feel alone in this process and feel like they're crazy and don't feel the support. And they might be in a situation where they don't have as many people around them that are making different decisions. So I would like for this next generation to have the support that we wish we would have had.
Yeah, me too. To listen to a podcast like this would have been a joy for me back then.
Yeah, that's actually a good point.
Two women, I was 40 without wanting children and having a long decision-making process. There would have been something for me back then to hear that. I mean, I've read a lot of books, but...
Nice.
Yeah. Thank you also. It was really fun for me.
Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. And please feel free to send questions, comments, and topics you would like to hear about to Isabel@kegelsandcoffee.com. That is ISABEL@kegelsandcoffee.com. Or you can find me on Instagram under Kegels and Coffee. Take good care, stay tuned, and remember, when in doubt, drink coffee or do Kegels.